Long ago, on a sporting trip to Otipoti on my teammate's laptop, I saw... On that day, war broke out between the internet and I. After a long battle, the spoilers were victorious. The curse of knowledge sealed away my desire to play. Many years later, Mount Zoth 202X. Legends say that those who find the stem cells never return. You'll have to wait for after the spoiler warning. What I saw sounded like this. I opposed spoilers, others disagreed. I spent a decade learning about the game against my will. Toby Fox was so dedicated to the ideal of the fresh playthrough that he fought against Let's Plays. The game was accessible. The game was easy. The game was warm and welcoming. The game did not scare me off. But I thought I knew everything there was to know about the game, so I did not play the game. At $1.30, I could no longer say no. And I was wrong. Spoilers for Undertale and Doki Doki Literature Club. So why is a video on the warm and wonderful welcome that Undertale gave me taking a detour down to the Lit Club? By complete chance, late in this video's production cycle, I stumbled across a video by user my name is 97, MYNAMIS 97, if you want to check it out. And this video alleges that Doki Doki's sequel is secretly Deltarune, Undertale's parallel core. Deltarune is confusing enough to define without explaining multiverse logic across different video game series. So I want to be clear, in no way is this video a crossover with or endorsed by that theory. I want to talk about Doki Doki for completely different reasons, and this is just a funny coincidence. That being said, I had a whale of a time watching that video, and while I do not believe it for a second, I was enormously entertained by its read on Deltarune. So this is just poking light fun. Nothing mean-spirited meant by this segment. So why do I want to talk about Doki Doki in the same breath as Undertale? It's going to be a long time before this video circles back to Doki Doki, and I am not going to be generous to it. I can only speak on Doki Doki because it enjoyed the same kind of unwanted cultural osmosis for me as Undertale did. I threw on the towel on the game when the first act finished, and I am not going back. These two games belong in the same conversation because they were the spearhead of a generational thrust by indie developers into subversive territory. AAA studios cannot risk big budgets on a flop that fails to live up to consumer expectations. They design and advertise games that are intended to be just what the doctor ordered. Indie developers lack the same oversight and are much freer to tip the pendulum towards their independent creative vision. AAA studios pride themselves on refining how efficiently they can reproduce the same formulas. The most versatile indie developers pride themselves on turning those formulas on their heads. Both games open in a fashion generic to their genres, both appear warm and welcoming. Both place an immediate emphasis on storytelling over complex gameplay. Both endear you to the first individual you meet. They're a friendly companion who will induct you to their world. And both... Oh. Flowey's iconic welcome to the game parallels DDLC's seemingly out-of-place content warning.
Exposure of highly disturbing content. Okay, alright, I agree!
Flowey instantly establishes that only one choice matters in the underground. You kill or you'll be killed. And you have to note here, he's just a little guy who shoots little pellets like a Plants vs. Zombies goon and gets swiftly swatted aside. The new player will have much more to do with him later. Indeed, the central mystery and the emotional heart of Undertale is, who is Flowey? But at this point, he comes off as a generic monster, your first and so far only impression for what a monster is like. It would seem to follow that every monster is gonna be just like him, that that's the kind of game you're in for, that the big subversion is that there's nothing light-hearted to love here. It's Doom with the doggy filter. As you travel through Undertale, you will find the lost belongings of scared children, children violently sacrificed by the millenarian cult that rules the underground. You can embark down the genocide route, killing every single critter in sight. This is a game that throws this at you. Yet none of these design decisions define Undertale. The game constantly subverts decades of game design, yet nothing subverts the concept that drove Toby Fox and Timmy Chang to create Undertale, the concept that has defined Undertale since the trailer rolled out. This is the RPG where you don't have to kill anybody. So how does Undertale pull that off? Stating the obvious here, Undertale is not dark. This is a game where choosing the worst, most violent option at every opportunity leads you to a final boss who seems dressing up for the occasion, is so sleepy that it will be the death of him, and offers you a ceasefire that, if accepted, yanks you out of the final showdown into this screen. I was intentionally misrepresenting what the actual experience of playing Undertale is like in order to clickbait you into liking this video and hitting the subscribe button for more like this. Undertale is very funny. It's pixely, it's cute. There is no way for Undertale to be a horror game. I'm not coming here to insist it's actually way more harrowing than people realize, and it's a hidden masterpiece of neo-gothic drama, and can you believe that they let kids play this slap on an R18 rating? None of that, categorically. But Undertale really did have to position its serious themes and dramatic moments side by side with goofs and glee. Each half of the game would seem to subvert the other, and compared to a AAA title, the game has a limited toolbox to work on such a massive challenge. How does Undertale avoid tonal whiplash? How does it tell you one thing and then another without losing your investment in what it has to say? If the game is going to subvert any expectations you set, then why should you expect more? To answer that, we must look to the writing and presentation of Undertale's best characters, the bosses. If you're not familiar with the term, a boss is a subcategory of antagonist used in video games. The idea runs that a segment of a game, such as a specific area or a narrative arc, can be concluded by a confrontation with a boss. By serving as your greatest challenge so far, defeating the boss or otherwise resolving your conflict with them proves that you have progressed enough to move on. Undertale adheres rigorously to the structure, with the underground split between 5 areas, 1 or 2 bosses representing each area, plus Flowey or Sans appearing across most, and a mandatory boss fight before you can move on to the next area. Here's the thing about Undertale. Every boss but one, from the moment you meet them, presents as one kind of character and turns out to have a whole nother side to them. The game chooses to lie, even if only by omission, about every boss except for one. Any dev team can write character arcs, so it's not inherently subversive to show how your choices and the developments of the plot change characters. That's just action and reaction. If you have a plot with any level of detail and you don't have character arcs, you might be doing something wrong. What is subversive is artfully crafting how you choose to present the world in order to mislead the player. As a player, it's satisfying to gain a clearer picture of the game world that was sitting there the whole time, waiting for you to discover it in all its truth. This is a video about how Undertale ensures that character twists feel not like an erasure of what you already knew about the game and a betrayal of its characters, but an evolution of character and an expansion of how you understand them. Undertale's subversions only enrich the game the further you go. We need to establish some rigorous criteria for what a boss is. I count characters who have character arcs, personal relationships to you, and make meaningful choices. By these standards, the following names qualify. Toriel, the Runes boss. Sans lives in Snowdin, but serves as the capital boss in the Genocide Room. Papyrus, the Snowdin boss. Undyne, the Waterfall boss. Alphys lives in Hotland. You don't fight her there or anywhere except as a lost soul, but you'll see. Mediton, the Hotland boss. Asgore serves as the capital boss in all neutral routes. Flowey serves as the secret final boss in all neutral routes. Azrael serves as the capital boss in the true pacifist route. The following mini-bosses may have cool showdowns, but they do not qualify as bosses because they barely appear outside of their boss fights and they lack all agency or complexity past either they kill you, you kill them, or you both hang on long enough to survive. Napsterbluke, the mad/glad dummy/Mew Mew, Muffet, Chara doesn't even meet some of these criteria. Take a moment to put yourself behind the eyes of a brand new unspoiled player. Look how Undertale first introduces you to each of these bosses, subverts that first impression, and never loses what makes them most compelling. Rewind the tapes. Hey, no, not those ones. We'll get to those later. Who swatted your would-be killer away? Flowey from the outset sows the wind with his vicious seeds. A monster who claims to be your friend and here to help you is, therefore, exactly the thing you fear most right now, and that whirlwind of mistrust is reaped by Toriel. Toriel's design is a comedic bit. Her cotton wool coddling pokes gentle fun at modern video game tutorials that do everything for you instead of teaching you through trial and error how to play. On its own, that might be a drag, but you've been primed to constantly probe her to see if she's truly what she purports to be. She invites you to cross over spikes and you wonder if they'll spring back out to impale you. She abandons you to walk alone across a long corridor, and you wonder at what horror the stressful music could augur. The ruins have been shaped by her around her own preferences and priorities. The first area of the game is a safe harbor. Every element is designed to soothe your tingling anxieties. You literally cannot get hurt by the spikes, the pit traps are harmless. You're treated to a plethora of pacifist monsters that are absent in every other region. And the midway mini-boss, unlike later threats, is a total sweetheart who's oblivious to the harm he's doing. But it becomes increasingly clear that Toriel is presenting you with a very slanted view on the underground. Monsters and humans don't always talk it out. Most will attack you and you can fight back. And she defies her role as a walking tutorial by omitting any tutorial's most important step. She refuses to explain how you leave the tutorial. You have to grow beyond her yourself to drive her to admit her lie. Her lie is her denial that there is anywhere else you could go. Why does that admission not break your faith in her, or at this point in this entire bloodthirsty world? Because she lied to protect you. Selfishly wanting to raise you well is neither malicious nor unsympathetic. She tests your strength, but she will not try to finish you off. Her motivations are exactly as you thought, but who she is more complex than you ever knew. This is not the kind of subversion that makes you give up on believing anything the game tells you in the belief it'll just pull the rug sooner or later. This reveal only intensifies your desire to find out more about the underground and the monsters who inhabit it. Toriel agrees with Flowey that the monsters of the underground will attempt to kill you, but her choice to lie still challenges Flowey's narrative directly by demonstrating some monsters will attempt to protect you. The fundamental conflict of the game has now been clearly framed. Will you kill as Flowey urges you to, or will you, by refraining from killing, risk being killed? Will you spare others and bear the consequences of that choice? Whether you slay or spare Toriel, you're released from the tutorial into the underground. Undertale has already dramatically and successfully subverted the RPG formula. From now on, you will have to weigh up that question and live with how your answers shape your run. Chapter 4. A new challenger approaches. Sans' introduction plays on the so far established fear of monsters before pivoting straight into comedy. This extended cutscene with Sans and Papyrus immediately establishes tone. If the ruins were your tutorial, Snowdin is an easy beginner area, a playground.
Everything.
Sans is the Patrick Starfish to Papyrus' Squidward. This unskippable cutscene with no interaction takes 4 minutes and 21 seconds. It is clearly important to Undertale's narrative that you really sit with what a light-hearted take on life in the underground looks like. On the genocide route, Sans almost immediately picks that you're only pretending to be human and actively pressures you to return to the light side of the game.
Gonna have a bad time.
So where's the part where we have a good
No genocide and no Papyrus murder means you'll get another chance after Snowdin to chat to Sans. After all his sentry stations, you can meet him at the hotel. There, he reveals what he'd been concealing from you. That Toriel made him promise not to attack anybody who passed her to leave the ruins. If not for that, he would have killed you just like any other human. Your initial impression of Sans as a slacker is half right. His motive for not doing his job as a sentry is still very facile. He and Toriel have fun cracking jokes. That's it. They don't drill down in their respective philosophies. But it presents an alternate Sans compatible with the Sans you know who would kill humans. This meeting is optional. What's not is the confrontation in the last corridor. The presence of the song that might play when you fight Sans in the soundtrack might trick you into expecting a fight here. In reality, that song goes unused. If Flowey is the devil on your right shoulder and Toriel the angel on your left, then Sans is the ego in the middle, the judge of your choices. He judges you for the choices you have made, good or bad, and lets you pass on your way to see the king. You are once again being made aware of the other side of Sans without having to see it head on. Sans will not fight you. The reveal that your final most dangerous boss to face on the genocide route is not Asgore nor Flowey, but Sans is a great subversion. Yet, you've received enough clues that something is up with him that this still feels like a satisfying case of pieces falling into place. His behaviour feels appropriate. Earlier in the game, Papyrus points out that the Bone Brothers literally can't stop smiling. Despite that, not just Sans' dialogue, but his facial expression outside of his grin communicates precisely what circle of hell he's living in right now. Yet he still keeps making his jokes and struggling with his fatal flaw. He is a lazy bones. He's not behaving like the hero of all monsters, the pinnacle of civilization and morality. He's just a guy with some special skills who really wants you to fail. It's an evolution, not a revolution, that avoids taking you out of the boss fight. How tangata his downfall ultimately is. Chapter 5, and you will call it Treason. Papyrus is played for laughs from the get-go. He has no hidden depths to perceive, and he is not perceptive. He is lied to by you and Sans, and he does a terrible job lying to Diane. If you embark on a genocide run and work with Flowey to neutralize Papyrus's puzzles...
Whoa, all these puzzles are completed! Papyrus isn't even here to tell me how to do this one.
Snowdin is where the impact of your actions really sinks in. You will have triggered a mass exodus of the terrified survivors. But even in these extraordinary circumstances, Papyrus demonstrates zero bite behind his bark and still believes in your goodness even after you strike him a mortal blow. The game completely convinces you that Papyrus is honest to a fault. Now how does that fact sit with you if you grab a bite with Sans and Snowdin? Just like at the hotel, Sans divulges an important connection between two bosses. At the hotel, it's him and Toriel. Here, he lets you know that a flower is influencing Papyrus more and more. Sans figures it's just an echo flower somebody's weaponizing. Another great example of how Undertale's writing treats its bosses as fallable, human, relatable. But because you know Flowey, you get a hint that poor, trusting Papyrus is falling into your golden friend's snare. This lends itself perfectly to one of my favorite moments in the entire game. Once you progress to the end of the capital on the true pacifist route, all your effort manages to bring everybody together. You're on the cusp of a good ending. None of you can leave the underground, but all of you have been united in peace. Except anxious girly alphas can't look past a good point. What compelled Papyrus to bring everybody here? If Papyrus was presented the way Sans is, you might suspect that he's been playing a bigger game this whole time. But because Undertale is so consistent with his characterization, you know he's not lying. In reality, he has been tricked by a manipulator who's been working him as an asset for a long time. The twist is that the guy you know you can trust can still be the engine of the destruction of everybody you care about. That ensures your gut drops exactly as planned when you realize how he has unwittingly deceived you all.
Let's just say a tiny flower helped me. Oh. A tiny flower? Oh, don't you
But what's even better is that the game does trick you about Papyrus in a small, satisfying way. Everything about Papyrus's characterization says he is utterly inept as an antagonist. His traps range from, I can figure this out in 2 seconds, to I can just walk past this, to this poses more of a danger to him than me. And you come into his fight feeling you have the upper hand. You've been tutored on how to deal with blue attacks. Sans even explicitly warns you to keep them in mind. If Toriel's boss fight was the final test of your basic understanding of the game's controls and how to move away from projectiles, Papyrus's will serve as your test of if you know when it's better not to move. When the fight starts, you can easily evade all of his attacks, including the blue ones. That frees up your attention to focus on his dialogue, building up his blue attack. He's already using blue attacks, so, for the first time, you're left at a loss to try to understand him. There's something you're not getting here. And that means that, as a first-time player, who has stared at the same red soul through every single fight, who has played by the same mechanics through 40% of the neutral route, you're caught completely off guard by this. When your soul was red, you could stop moving instantly by simply lifting your hands off the keyboard. Now that gravity will keep acting on you even after you jump, you can't stop on command. You have to calculate your jumps ahead of time, both to evade regular attacks and to land before blue attacks arrive. Papyrus whipped me again and again. So how does Undertale avoid wrecking its comic release characterization by turning him into a proper menace like a second Sans? Because it's made abundantly clear that this is still the same Papyrus. He was already high on his own supply. If you hold out for long enough, he'll talk himself out of fighting. If he drops you to 1 HP, uniquely for Undertale's enemies, he will just refuse to keep fighting you. Lose to him as many times as I did and he will, again, uniquely, straight up give up, let you pass in peace, and offer his friendship. To conclude this chapter then, Papyrus is the perfect introduction to the monsters of the wider underground. They may intend to defeat you, but their anti-human antagonism typically doesn't run that deep. They have bubbly, befriendable personalities outside of their attacks. Either way, you know now that you best beware what bosses can do to your soul. After all, as Papyrus warns you, that's why monsters want to kill you, to take yours. Chapter 6. Every Shyren is a symphony. I've been on a real journey with this region. I got up to the end of Waterfall when I was graciously granted a turn back in Dunners all those years ago. And in my first run on my own time, just like back then, I was not a fan, but I've had time to sit with it and I've actually come to believe that it's the best crafted region in the entire game. With Waterfall, the Underteam has the strongest sense of what they're trying to accomplish. Outside the genocide route and excluding Flowey, the first two regions of Undertale are almost uniformly light and easy. You stroll around, you hang out with cheerful bosses, you have some fun, and you learn very little by way of the main plot. Waterfall, coming directly after Papyrus's revelation, kicks the Undertale into gear with an absolute truckload of lore directly applicable to what you are going to do. In a nutshell, everything communicated through the echo flowers and the ancient glyphs on the walls builds on the hints in the game's introduction and boss dialogue. These testimonies deepen the pain of confinement under human domination, and that places a sense of urgency on the solution. Asgore must collect 7 human souls. This emotional exposition is delivered in a region that's quite literally dark in its aesthetics, set to a dramatic score that hits extraordinarily low notes on the piano. The game does not jettison its lighter side. There are jokes, most notably the delightfully stupid Timmy village, and the monster kid presents a naively positive perspective. But overall, Waterfall is a shift towards a traditional RPG narrative. A realm that has fallen into darkness requires saving. You could say that the waterfall is composed of the tears of the kingdom. Your journey has entered a perilous stage, and Diane is the peril. So far, you have always been in control as you move around the overworld of the game. You'll run into random encounters and there are thresholds that you cannot cross, but you are the only one that moves. If you get up from your keyboard and walk away for 10 minutes, nothing will happen. Time only moves when you move. Diane upends that by moving too. If you go AFK in the wrong place, you will die. Your linear progression is disrupted. You are forced to hide or go out of your way to escape her. This is all classic villain behavior across many genres and visual mediums. A growing list of encounters with her establish the threat and ratchet up the tension. Your dynamic is not primarily about your relationship and feelings about each other, but a simple clash of power and life and death. That arc is instead tracked by the monster kid, whose bumbling interference with her pursuit leads him to the gradual realization that she's hunting you, until he finally takes her side. His exit stage left shews out the last traces of bathos, the last chance of delay. The two of you are, at last, left to face each other. If you're on the genocide route, that means the hero of all monsters. If you're on the neutral or true pacifist route, something very different is in store for you. Undyne sounds off with the typical right-hand villain monologue, where she'll provide the last steps of useful lore dumping for you to put together the rest of the plot before you defeat her to reach the big bad Asgore himself. She gets as far as confirming that Asgore already has 6 souls, dramatically spiking the stakes. Everything hinges on your fate. But if Papyrus threw you for a loop, Undyne absolutely flips the table on you. Papyrus is happy to play the role of the Saturday morning cartoon villain, posturing without presenting a threat. Undyne, though, has a genuine and fervent conviction that it is right and good to kill humans for their souls. More than that, girl's got a temper. She takes that traditional RPG script and she tosses it right in the waterfall. She is totally convinced that she'll stop you long before you reach Asgore, so why bother explaining his story? She dispenses with the pleasantries and gets right to killing you. She tries to cut you down as the unmoving target, and you're best served by trying to run away from her as she moves towards you, which is the exact opposite of how you're used to walking up to monsters to interact with them. The genocide run forces you into a direct confrontation that only dials in even more on the central twist here. Undyne, in the Underground's history, is the ultimate hero, and you are its greatest villain. The difference is that on the genocide run, she is unequivocally in the right in doing a heroic thing. Either way, Undyne's fight is the tiniest subversion in perspective, but it completely transforms both the emotions and the gameplay experience of your confrontation with her, however you resolve it. The central mystery of Undertale could have been solved there and then through essential lore dumping. Alas, that will have to wait all the way for the new home segment before you meet Asgore. Hey, hang on. New homes in the capital region. We're missing one. Someone's interfered with my schedule. What are you doing on my set? What? Union schedule? Hey, get your hands off me. My voice is doing just fine. I don't need any why. No. Chapter 7.
Everybody's favorite quizmaster is back to answer that question that's been consuming your waking moments. Which 2 characters can inflict over 19 damage to you in one hit?
Contestant number 4, do you have the answers?
It's on the tip of my tongue.
Error. The first human to fall down inflicts 999. You get the point. Damage on you if you refuse to destroy the world at the end of your genocide run. The girls are fighting. During my quiz show, incorrect answers are penalized by the deduction of half your current HP. Our expert team of boffins have crunched the numbers behind the scenes to confirm that if you have killed enough monsters for your level of violence to rise to 6 or higher and have fully healed, then current HP divided by 2 is over 19. Did you get it right? Sorry, what's that? Did you assume that we would adhere to proper chronology and talk about Elphys first? Oh no, I am done with that puffed up otaku stealing my spotlight. Let's skip to the good bit. She booby-trapped Hotland so that you would need her help, so that she could feel better about herself. She's like if Sam the Slayer actually was lying for a clout. By 2035, all spoiler hardly videos will be 2-hour deep dives on ML1 A Storm of Swords. Now, please pick up your stylus again, because it's time to resume your essay.
Okay, so I think Metaton is a well-presented, entertaining character with lots of great set pieces who is not very interesting to talk about at all. His twist is obvious from the start. His flat, robotic intonation and appearance contrasts with his constant thirst for attention, which is only reinforced by his secret backstory. This motivates his big monologue, but it really centers on communicating plot to you. Alphys's lie to become an important part of your story. Where Undyne wrestled with you for the role of the protagonist, Alphys is fixated on riding shotgun. This is a twist that forces you to re-examine your entire time in the Hotland, now and on future playthroughs. If Papyrus cares more about flattering himself than capturing you, and Undyne is hell-bent on defeating you, then Mettaton has just been practicing K-Farb until now, and on the genocide run, he actively refuses to face you for as long as possible, then makes a total meal out of your fight. On other routes, his fight is a delight that concludes his plotline and leaves us to examine something far more interesting, our transformed relationship with Alphys. Chapter 8. I had to read Homestuck to figure out an appropriate reference to title this chapter. I hope you're all happy. I wrote this title as a placeholder and concluded recent events have made it way funnier than anything I could possibly accomplish by actually reading that Waitui Whakakata. Undertale carries a negative association with the intense, quirky internet subcultures of the 2010s. I don't care. What point is there to picking on kids having fun? I do care when the game itself indulges in too much of a good thing. Undertale does its XD rollover laughing humour best in small doses, from the digression through Snowden to the body horror of Burger Pants. I think Man-Child Skeletor is a great shtick on paper, but even I was worn down by the point of marinara sauce and spaghetti date gifts. And Alphys just does not shut up, ever. She keeps interrupting you playing the game to be a loser, and I don't like it. She's kind of like Sam the Slayer.
The thing about
Undyne!
that's so interesting is it's bloody kill me. No, truly.
I'm particularly cool to Alphys's phone calls because Undertale has already pulled this trick. Remember Toriel? It's much more hatukihi when it's a well-meaning Luddite who keeps ringing you, rather than a blue check who has to make rent. And yet, Alphys, my least favourite character in my least favourite region on my neutral route run, inspired this entire video. If I warmed up on Waterfall and Undyne, then Alphys was the case where my expectations were burned away by how far her role rocketed up in my estimation. Let's start with her destructive need to solve her insecurities. You can draw a straight line between fictional dramatic narratives created by humans and her own real behaviour. She is going to such lengths to build a fake connection, because this is the kind of companionship that fiction models for her. Her perspective on how to win friends and influence people is built on dramatics and conflict, rather than the infinitely more uncomfortable and banal idea of having to be vulnerable and honest and real around other people. She's a nerdy BoJack Horseman.
I used to feel like my whole life was an acting job, doing an impression of the people I saw on television.
The kind of person who grows frustrated and confused when life doesn't resolve for her as easily as a 22-minute episode of
I
telly.
felt like a Xerox of a person, you know what I mean?
But let's push that comparison one step further. Both BoJack Horseman and Hotland Undertale are telling stories about sometimes funny animals who are failing to confront their very serious mental issues head on.
Oh no, I seem very happy.
Alphys is depicted as suffering social anxiety and self-loathing, but these are only part of her personality, something fiction often misses in 2025, let alone 2015. And Undertale is bold enough to take it one step further beyond. That's risky. And before I get to explaining what that step is, just to show how impressive it is that this shakes out as a virtue and not a vice of the text, we have to contrast the stunning success of Undertale's writing and presentation with Doki Doki Literature. Warning for discussion of depression and suicide. DDLC's initial promise made to the player is that its characters are bland and welcoming, in keeping with the expectations of the genre. The game satirizes two-dimensional characters who just exist as cheerleaders for the player character. Implicitly, this criticizes the expectations held by fans of these simulators. The twist is that all of these bland, welcoming NPCs are defined by mental illness. Sayori is depressed, Yuri is unstable and desires self-harm. Both are suicidal. Monica is narcissistic and, like Alphys, obsessed with validating herself through proximity to you, and Natsuki is short. This is, in isolation, a good subversion. The player has gotten to know these welcoming and bubbly personalities, cares about them, and the newfound knowledge that their suffering generates compassion. Much of the reception to this game focused on the unexpected depth the writing led to these characters, contra widespread misunderstanding and stigmatization. That reception, in my eyes, was a misdiagnosis. DDLC postures as a heartfelt portrayal of the serious issues that real-life teenagers go through. But the game eventually reveals that Monica wanted to remove the others, so she simply reprogrammed the others to destroy themselves. Mental issues are quite literally weaponized in the text of the text. The game wanted you to play the detective and uncover that these are complex people with relatable issues, only the game then tells you that no, actually, they can be explained in story as piles of code that can be tinkered with without their conscious awareness or any true control over their response. Would there be any difference if Monica reprogrammed them with the strong desire to fly to Fiji? Would it say something compelling about impacts of over-tourism or the dangers of air travel if that was the direction the plot took? Of course not. This literal plot rewrite works as a twist to evolve Monica's character, but not for the other three students. What is the difference between Sayori and Yuri and Natsuki that explains the different issues they grapple with and why you should get invested in each of them if all of them share the same external root cause that they have no agency over or awareness of? Their altered behavior turns out to have nothing to do with who they were before or the choices they have made. Your engagement with their characters is now broken. There's no point learning more about them or thinking further about them if they can shift on a dime in ways totally alien to their understanding. The game no longer wants to convince you that these are people who can be compared analogously to real-life sufferers of mental illness, whether that's you or the people around you. The game wants you to understand that Sayori and Yuri and Natsuki ultimately have no common ground with human beings. Yet the good ending, just like in Undertale, is to truly appreciate all the characters who are just piles of code. And you have to keep in mind this is supposed to be a sympathetic story about mental illness and self-destructive behavior. But Monica, our Alphys analog, is required by the good ending to obliterate herself from existence.
I think this game tries to do two things, and it really should only focus on one. And I've had people defend it to me, being like, oh, well, you don't understand the deepness of this character, how compelling it actually is, how her story of depression is actually really well handled, and what this game means. If this game was a normal visual novel dating sim up until that point, and then it's just an image of her hanging, I think it would have been well handled, because up until that point, it's a very good representation of depression. And I think it's cool that no matter what we choose, we can't save her. But it's not taken seriously. This game is not about depression. It's about an evil glitch monster. And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying pick a lane. Do one or the other. So when you show the scene of her hanging herself and do a horror sting and zoom in on her face and have all the glitchy effects, it isn't a compelling and moving story about a depressed person who had all the signs that went unnoticed. Sayori has now been deleted from the game, and you can see here her sprite is jumbled. So I think somebody saying that it's a story about depression, that isn't what the game is about. It isn't about depression. It isn't about suicide. It's about, wouldn't it be f***ed up if this thing happened? It doesn't take that seriously at all. It doesn't show the suicide as a harrowing reminder that it could happen to anyone, even your closest friend. It shows the suicide to jump scare you.
This is a bad and frankly game-destroying use of sensitive topics in writing. What we were first promised by the game about each character has nothing to do with the reveal, the subversion. DDLC wants to win the audience's trust by appearing thoughtful, then exploit that trust as a lazy shortcut to generic plot outcomes. Because that's the irony. Doki Doki Literally Club wants to subvert your expectations, but all that subversion winds up producing is a plotline that we've all heard before about an out-of-control AI. It's trying to carry an entire 3-act narrative on the back of white bread metaton. It blows so far past what you expected that it actually gets more boring. Compare DDLC's incoherent writing to how the true pacifist run utilizes Alphys's mental issues. Metaton has revealed her deception, consistent with her character so far, with plenty of clues laid out along the way. Her guilt compels her to confess your success is incompatible with Asgore's. You must kill him to progress past the barrier and escape. The Waterfall region taught you that you cannot give up just yet. Now the hope that there is an alternative to killing or being killed is existentially threatened. And we leave Alphys without her arc resolved. She's guiltier than ever. So, what do? Well, progressing down the pacifist route prompts character development in other bosses. Papyrus accepted it's foolish for him to try hard in his heart. Diane realized humans can be okay, and her rage led her astray. And going far enough down this route will thrust you back into the life of Alphys to try to help her just the same. Her behavior on the date seems very in character for her, and it seems like you have a chance to change her for the better, until you start getting hints that something is terribly wrong here. Chapter 9, Diane, I need you to tell me that I'm good. The prevailing narrative around anxiety and self-loathing for most people for all of human history has been, shut up, you're annoying. The modern counter-narrative, whose healing power was particularly of interest to nerdy shut-ins in the 2010s fixating on indie games and posting about them on Tumblr, is you're not the worst, people do care about you. That seems to be the direction that this story is going in. Papyrus is going to build up her confidence and she'll be able to start seeing Undyne, and you get the phone call. The phone call from Papyrus, which, as we've established, is pretty much the highest form of truth that Undertale has to offer. For once, the only time outside the genocide run, he seems anxious, and he admits it's a situation he can't handle.
A situation that Papyrus can't handle is a common occurrence. A situation that Papyrus admits he can't handle?
You come over to the lab, and you find the entrance to the true lab. Like I mentioned at the start, I had a lot of Undertale spoiled for me. I knew about almost everything in the game, including bits and pieces of Photoshop flowing. Up until this point, I had no idea the true laboratory even existed, and it rocks. Everybody else has obscured something about their character from you specifically. Flowey is really a killer. Toriel is controlling. Papyrus has a blue attack. Sans gets work done. Undyne rushes headlong into heroism, and Metaton is truly self-obsessed. But Alphys has been lying to everybody. As I crept around the skin-crawling lab and read up on her apocalyptic logs, I felt that sinking feeling, and I repeated again and again, oh God, Alphys, what have you done? Her experiments on the dying, her failures, the letters from the families asking what she's done with their loved ones, the golden flower she gave life. Alphys is more complex than you ever knew. When you first met her in person, you just figured that she was friendly and helpful. Then you realized from her calls that she's irrationally anxious too. And then you were told by Metaton that she was both of these things, but that she was also undermining you to make herself feel better. And now you know from her logs that she's both irrationally anxious and also has perfectly good reasons to be anxious and doubt herself, because she actually has done some horrible things and lied to even the people she cares about when it comes to really important stuff. It's her Bojack moment. He can excuse all his acts by way of his issues and explain all the terrible things that have happened to him, but that doesn't resolve the bad things he chooses to do. So too is Alphys both an unfortunate sufferer of low self-esteem and also doing some messed up stuff for an even more messed up king. Mental issues can manifest effectively at random, but they can also be cause and reaction to very real, tangible events, what others do to you or even what you do yourself. We've been asked to consider Alphys not as a character drawn up with a bullet-pointed list of traits or anxieties sits somewhere between Narara and nearsighted, but as a person whose current self exists in a continuity of choice and consequence. Alphys is a well-developed character who feels alive. She wasn't just waiting in this room for your arrival to activate her as an asset to your story. She's a sentient being choosing what she does day in and day out. And the flip side of that is that it's such a brilliant extension to her character, and it feels so real. There isn't a magical silver shield around people who feel like they screw up and hurt people that stops them from screwing up and hurting people. It doesn't mean she can't make things right or shouldn't work on her anxiety or that her friends are wrong to keep caring about her, but it's a complex and thoughtful way to extend on her issues. Nothing about this betrays what we already knew about her. It fits like a glove and completely changes on replay how you perceive her evident guilt. The true pacifist ending is definitive, but you always want to leave the audience wanting more. And the question that Undertale left me with was, even after the best possible ending, what comes next for the architects of the Underground's great cover-up for Alphys and her king? Chapter 10. That beer hit my hand on the highway like Mjolnir. Between Mediton and Photoshop Flowey, until now, I've been skipping over one more piece of plot, the conventional finale to the game before Flowey the living fourth wall break kicks in. So, as we approach that point, consider what we now know about Undertale's bosses with all the experiences we've gone through. Nobody is a binary packet of code. Everybody wants something more than just a win or loss against you in a fight. Flowey may impulsively come for your soul from the get-go, but on all routes he lets you leave the ruins because he has bigger plans. Toriel wants to keep you around. Papyrus and Sans like to share hijinks with you. Undyne hopes to defeat you Pretz more than anybody else, but her impulsivity betrays that she's not laser focused on victory. She wants to let out all her rage too to be challenged. Alphys is desperate to feel good about herself again, and Mediton hungers for the crowd's love. Everybody wants something more than the W or the L. Everybody, except the one consistent character throughout the entire game, Asgore. The way Toriel introduces him, singles him out from the other monsters, the bold red of his name instantly establishes that he is the greatest threat to your life. He is the traditional final boss, the king of the kingdom you hope to overthrow and escape past. If you fail, he will break the barrier, unleash his hordes of monstrosities upon humanity. Classic RPG stuff. But in the world of Undertale, which is so centered on the lives of the monsters instead of the humans, when nobody but Flowey really talks about menacing human civilization, his goal means that everybody except Toriel really likes him. Killing humans in the underground isn't evil, it's liberatory, and everybody who knows him constantly stresses how friendly and fuzzy he is. Knowing Toriel split with Asgore when he turned against humans does not clarify the central question you have on your mind as you approach the capital. Is he the murderous danger you've been warned about, that traditional RPG foe, or is he just a bundle of love? I was stuck with this question the whole time. I don't know about the true lab or the answer to the Flowey mystery. I knew nothing about Asgore either. And Asgore's introduction is absolutely perfect to maintain that tension. The sounds of nature that have been so absent since you fell down. That beautiful bed of flowers he learned to fear, the little step he takes back, the small shock, and how it immediately becomes clear that he is genuinely kind and welcoming, and shares the belief with all his subjects that killing you is like a visit to the dentist, a painful but necessary extraction for the health of the body politic. This is the climactic reveal of every first fresh playthrough of Undertale. After subverting your expectations so much, the game trusts you've learnt to grasp its full complexity, light and dark, and this presentation is far more effective than it ever would have been the other way round. If I had heard all of this build up about Mr. Fluffy Buns, and it turned out everybody was wrong and this guy was just obviously evil, then what would the subversion be at all? If he instantly attacked you then offered you tea at 1 HP, he'd seem more like an irredeemable menace who happens to smile a lot than a complex character. And how frustrating would it be to wrap up a fight against Doom with the doggy filter just to face another nihilist back to back? And the opposite prospect is just as bad. If I played through the entire game and spent hours getting better at playing out fights just to find out that Asgore was a non-violent Toriel retread, I would feel so let down, and a sudden handmonger to Flowey would be both abrupt and nonsensical. I would ask why hadn't Flowey just taken him out sooner? Asgore could never work if he collapsed into a particle or a wave. He had to be Schrodinger's goat. This way, you can see all his depths immediately. There's nothing left to plumb. Even his theme is literally him. This is the end. He is the end game. You cannot change that. There is no way to save his life. Spare him or kill him, he will die all the same. A genocide run merely accelerates his death and your run ends within minutes after that, unsatisfied, and the inevitability of Asgore grants him the gravitas he needs to fulfill the traditional role of final boss. But that same inevitability violates the game's original promise to you, that this is the RPG where no one has to die. If you choose peace, Flowey spoils your perfect ending. You can get an ending, but it still robs you of the fulfillment you expect in return for all the effort you put in to get to know every single character. Undertale intensifies your investment at this late hour by threatening to subvert every expectation you had laid down, but all of your hopes and dreams have to actually go somewhere or the whole experience is ruined. And your hope for a perfect ending powers you through the game's final challenge. Can you understand the Undertale's real antagonist? The only way you can change his fate is to bring Toriel back, the one monster willing to stand up and criticize him. And if at last you demonstrate you fully understand what the game is revealing to you about every character, Undertale has one last challenge of insight for you. Can you understand the Undertale's real antagonist? Chapter 11. But it refused. With Asgore, you see his friendly side, then his hostile side, and finally his merciful side again. So too with Flowey. After you first assumed he was a friend, then realized he was an enemy, now that he has recovered his true form, it becomes apparent that there is something else under there, besides an eldritch entity of pure chaos. His story is peppered with constant hints that he is an immature child. Right at the very start, he throws away a golden opportunity to kill you just to taunt you as an idiot, his favourite line. He's hardly Moriarty. Even his sociopathic monologue on the genocide route degenerates into blubbering pleading. And I particularly appreciate how he plays out a trope I'm going to formally christen as Psych You Thought. Psych You Thought, or SYT, is when a bold or ambitious declaration is undercut by somebody else mocking that declaration. It's getting hit with the, that must have sounded better in your head. So often, this just creates cringeworthy bathos by dragging down whoever was originally trying to be cool in their own attempt to look cool. It's like putting a heart-pumping score over a Twitter slap. What is even that line? That doesn't even work. See, that's what it is. Flowey goes full SYT whether you're on the neutral or true pacifist route. He will pretend to fear his downfall just to subvert your hopes and dreams. But each time, you always feel that what he's reacting to was sincere and valuable emotion
on the part of the other characters.
And all he has to offer in return is immature venom. The true pacifist route requires you to demonstrate you understand the depths of every character, both their initial promise and how their twist fulfills them. And so, in this grand finale to cap it off, you are forced one more time to prove it, to reach into their hearts and remind them of their own complexities that they had forgotten, until in the end it falls to you to remind Azrael too. Undertale's true pacifist ending concludes on a magnificent victory lap, not just its fantastic credit sequence, but the ability to walk through the game and admire the completeness of its writing and presentation. And if you do what I did out of curiosity, and return all the way to the very beginning, you will find the last echoes of the Undertale. That before this terrifying monstrosity, there was just a kid who played with his friend and didn't want to be alone anymore. And this is the final and most brilliant twist of character of all. Chapter 12. Or is it just my daily soul? From the moment you enter the game, your existence and journey is framed by external narration. Your first choice is what to name the fallen human. Only the narration references that name. And so, the promise we presume is true is that the human we play as is the correct subject here, that this human fell down in the year 201X. But, as we encounter growing evidence that Flowey claims to know us personally, things start to get strange. If we only just enter the underground, how can we tie into all this lore? How can we possibly be the king and queen's adopted child from years ago? The one who Azrael played with? And then the crucial clue drops, when a voice that can surely only be Flowey speaks to us just before we leave the true laboratory.
And the game has the grace to let you know
it's a voice you've never heard before. And this message is written in the same text from neutral runs that tells you that this is all a mod, Papa. That's Flowey text. Everything presented that ties you to the first human is by the narration and by Azrael. The twist is flipped on its head, informing you that this human has their own history and motives that you were never privy to. A prior history in the underground would be the kind of twist that would only undermine the game's emotional resonance. It would rob your decisions of the fresh experience of the underground, the sense of your expectations being subverted, of all the meaning you had imparted onto them, the role-playing you had undertaken as a partner to the game. This is the sort of twist that only asserts more vigorously the value of all the choices you made. That the primary antagonist was projecting onto you somebody you're not, somebody uncomplicated, the villain of another story. That despite everything, it's still you. Only one choice matters in the underground. You kill or you will be killed. We've come a long way since then. Toriel urges you not to kill, Sans judges your level of violence, Papyrus shows friendship is more valuable than killing, Diane realizes killing is antithetical to heroism, Alphys finds the strength to treat the victims of violence right, and Asgore renounces his murderous mission. And so, at last, Azrael leaves you with the moral of this Undertale. You had to fight alone. It was a wild world out there. But deeper down, past the promise of the RPG where you have to dodge attacks and heal up, a promise that came true countless times, was a twist that was really delivered on. Don't kill or be killed. Undertale is proof that you can make a story that subverts expectations without just wasting everybody's time. An endless parade of properties like Doki Doki Literature Club seem to believe that the purpose of a story is its subversions, that the surrounding narrative and presentation exists to convey subversions to you and glorify how much wool they pulled over your eyes. But Undertale isn't so admiring of its subversions as to lose sight of what they're for. They're tools, careful combinations of the building blocks of storytelling to advance what the story is actually about. Undertale takes on an incredibly simple theme, that wars make not one great, that a true hero saves and spares. You've heard variations on that theme 100 times, but it uses its creative advantages to breathe life into its corridor on this idea, and it works like subversion on its own is not inherently good and is not enough. It's about the work and time that comes with thoughtful crafting, not just of writing, but of all the surrounding game design, to build a bond of trust with the player, and to make sure that twists carefully extend and improve on what is already known, instead of throwing the kid out with the watering can. It's a masterclass in subversion, because in the end, what people remember most about Undertale, what they value the most, and what made them cry, wasn't how subversive and edgy and hip it was. Wasn't when Flowey deleted their save or doxed Twitch chatters or SYT'd. It was that Undertale was the RPG that promised you that you didn't have to kill anybody, and kept that promise.
Check it out, I'm in that heart.
Dare! Don't you dare kill them all!
I gently open the door.
If you have a problem with this costume not being accurate enough, then you're a freak.